Hi, it's Ali from Merlin Mosaica here. I'm just about to show you how I grout using Litokol StyleGrout Tech and the dry grout method or dry cleanup method. Firstly, I'll go through the tools I have. So obviously this is the piece that I'm going to be grouting, and I just want to point out that I haven't cleaned this piece. It was just made fairly recently, and I used Prep multi-use adhesive, and you can see that there's some glue stuck on the tiles. I'm not going to clean that off before I grout, but for the moment I'll just put that to one side. So today I will be using StyleGrout Tech Super Smooth Cement Grout in black. And the things I will need are some nitrile gloves, which I have here, and a bowl and a spoon to mix it with. Maybe some people like to use timber sticks. I personally prefer a spoon, but that's personal choice. I have some scrapers here to clean up with, and I have obviously some water. Most importantly, I also have a dust mask. Now, when you're working with cement products, it is important when they're in their dry form that you use a mask to avoid breathing in the dust. It's not very good for your lungs at all. I also have a cloth for cleaning. Now, I normally use a t-shirt material, but at the moment I'm all out of t-shirts just in this location, so I have an old, very soft tea towel that's here, or a microfiber cloth. But as long as it's soft, it doesn't really matter. So I'm back now. I have my gloves on. I also have my mask. I do apologise if my voice sounds a little bit muffled because of that. Now, I will only keep the mask on while the grout is dry. So this piece is not huge. I'm just going to measure it for you. It's about 300 across, but as you can see, a large portion of that is not going to be grouted. So what I've decided to do is, I have two bowls here. I'm only going to use the small one. I don't think the big one will be necessary. So what I will do is just mix up the grout, show you how I do it. I tend to mix grout on the dry side, so I'm just going to have, that's a good teaspoonful. This poor old spoon came from Ben & Jerry's, I think, but it's a good size. So, as I said, I grout on the dry side, so I tend to pour just a little bit in, and I'll get my spoon. As I said, I prefer to mix with a spoon. And what I'm trying to do, this grout is very fine and very smooth, and it's a bit like icing sugar in that 1 minute it's too dry and the next minute it's too wet. What I'm trying to do is just get it to the ball stage, as I call it. It's starting to form little balls, and now I just need to add a little bit more, and I mean a little bit, and I want to get it so that it just starts to form a contiguous lump, which it's just about done. And you can see there's a little bit of gloss on that, just a little bit of gloss. So I'm going to leave that now. Now, this grout only has a slake time of 3 minutes. That's very quick, and that's just a good time to remove the mask, do any clean up and tidy up, make sure that I've got water in my bucket next to me. That's something I always have. And so I shall be back shortly. So it's been 3 minutes. I do have water in my bucket. Why do I need water in my bucket? purely for cleaning up of the tools, that's all. I don't use any more water. And so now I'm just going to check my grout, and as you can see, it's a nice shiny lump. Now, this is a lot drier than most people grout. Why do I grout dry? I grout dry because I actually work a lot with glass on glass, and I find that the drier grout decreases the likelihood of grout bleed because it makes it harder for the grout to get under your pieces. And I also find that I can put it on more thinly and just push it into the holes, and I use less grout that way as well, and it makes for a quicker clean up. So in order to use this now, I'll just give it a bit of a stir or a splodge, and I just dollop it on. Now, quite often these I would tape the edges of this piece, the piece beforehand, because the grout will stain, but what I'm going to do with this is paint it later, so I'm not too worried. So I'll just leave, I've left a little bit in the tub, but now, see how I said it was a lump? I'm just spreading that lump, holding it in my hand and spreading it into the interstices and the gaps, and just making sure that, paying attention that I get it into all the little holes. So I don't tend to leave a lot on. But I do pay attention to those gaps as I go. Now, as I said, if you don't want to paint the edge and you want to leave it as a white, I would suggest that you tape it up first. I haven't had a lot of time to spend with this piece, so I'm not doing that, but that's okay. It'll just get painted at the end and it'll be fine. So when we finish here, it will look stained, but rest assured I will come back and paint it. Probably, I might just do this one as silver, I think. So you will recall I only used a heaped table of grout, not much, and whilst I have some left over, there's not a huge amount, and I can just put that in there, and I won't throw it away just yet, and I'll show you why in a minute. But so what I'm doing now is I'm just making sure, double checking on all the gaps and making sure that it's full of grout, because there are a couple of bigger pieces there, because I have some circular pieces. They have wider grout lines. Now, I do tend to use smaller grout lines in most of my work, but this grout will span up to 2 centimetres, which is quite a lot, without cracking, and which is a good thing. It also has bacteria inhibitor, and it has an anti-efflorescent additive. That does not mean that it won't effloresce, but it reduces the incidence of efflorescent, and that's the whitish bloom you sometimes see on grout, particularly after periods of heavy rain or moisture. I think that's really about done. This grout is also submersible, so it's designed to go into swimming pools, and you don't need to seal it. You just grout it, clean it, let it cure, and away you go. So I'm just going to leave that. I'm going to remove my gloves, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually place my glove over the tub of leftover grout. Why do I do that? Because when I'm cleaning off, if I accidentally do pull any out, that can I can repair that without having to mix up another batch. So I'm going to leave that now to haze over. Now, hazing over is basically the grout is starting to dry. It is warm-ish this afternoon, and I have got the air conditioning off, so I'm hopeful that it will dry fairly quickly. And as I said, I don't have a lot of grout on the top of that piece. A lot of people quite often have their grout left on very thickly, so mine should start to dry out more quickly. So now I'm back. I have got a fresh pair of gloves on because I don't want to stain my hands with the grout. And it has started to to haze off nicely. I've taken the liberty of just wiping over the frame a little bit. Now, these gloves are available at Merlin Mosaica, as are the mosaic sticks and the tools I'm about to use. I have decided to use the smaller rag because I don't think I need the big T-tap. And the first thing I'll say is I don't use any water when I'm cleaning up my grout. Why don't I use water? Because I find that adding water to the grout just turns it into mud and makes a lot of mess. And when I have done that, I've had to use 2 different cloths to have 2 different goes, an initial clean and then a second clean. And also I end up with grout water that I have to dispose of. Now, grout water should never go down your sink, and cloths should never be washed in your washing machine. Cement products are very bad for plumbing, as they are for your plumbing, i.e. your lungs. So when I finished with this, it goes in the bin. If you do decide that you want to use water in cleanup, what I suggest you do is you have in your bucket, you clean all your tools into the bucket and let it sit, and so the grout residue or sludge sits to the bottom of the bucket. Then you very carefully pour that water out onto the garden, not down the drains, and then you can scrape out that sludge and put it in the bin and dispose of it that way. You try to avoid grout going into your garden and down the drains at all costs. Cement is very bad in that regard. So here we go. Now, I don't use a lot of pressure, and as I said, it's been drying off nicely, and I just quite lightly wiping, and you can see it's pulling away nicely, just gently. And as I said earlier, I do have a couple of bigger pieces. I do know that there's a piece in there, which brings me to a point I should have mentioned earlier. Before you grout, you should always take a photograph of your piece, because I know there's a piece in there and I know there's pieces in here, but sometimes you forget. And the reason I can't see those is they're slightly thinner than the other pieces surrounding them. So of course the grout has just covered over the top of them. You will also recall I mentioned that I hadn't cleaned this piece terribly well, and I did that by intention because I want to show you how to remove grout from glue at the grouting stage. I used to try and clean it off before I grouted, but I don't so much anymore. Now, even with this light pressure that I've employed, you can see how shiny the pieces are starting to become. This is a part of grouting that a lot of people hate. I find it quite meditative. Now, this is where I do like to use, when I've got bigger pieces, I do like to use a paddle pop stick just to get it out. And you can see there's another piece sort of becoming apparent there, and there'll be one in here, I know. I just remember where I placed them. But sometimes, particularly if it's been some time since you've done the piece, you may not remember. So, as I said, try and take a photograph before you grout. It's a good idea. And I'm just going through, as I said, getting all the areas where there's darker, larger pieces. I'm removing those out now. And I don't use a lot of pressure at this point. I don't use a lot of pressure any time actually. I just gently rub and polish as I go. tip the stuff into the bin. Now remember, I purposely didn't clean it off. You can see that's a piece of glue, but the amount of moisture that I had in the grout, which wasn't a lot, is just enough to soften this glue. Of course, if you've again left this for a number of days or weeks or months, as sometimes happens, the glue may not soften up as quickly, but it usually does pretty well. I know there's a chip on that corner, I can just see that, so I'm not going to dig into that one. And I know, you know, that I know these, just there's a bit of grout coverage. As I said, some of these pieces are lower, so I'm just going and cleaning those out. And see, I just basically start from one end and work down. I'll just move those out, stop them rattling. And there's a number of tools you can use. So these little tools are in my Grout Mosaic tool pick kit, and they've got a good flat end on them. And so what I quite often do is I get the curved, there's a curved shape to them, and I used to quite often rub that across the tiles and pull out. That way I'm not actually ever going to be risking trying to scratch my glass, although you have to do have to work hard to scratch your glass. But also, if you have, let me find one, if you have areas where you've got deeper pieces here, if you do this and scratch, you can then chamfer the edge up to the higher pieces and give it more of a gradation between the higher and the lower pieces, because you don't want to stab in there and make a sharp mark, because that will stand out later. It's better to have things just a bit smoother. So, and if you've got grout that's going over the edges of your tiles, it gives it a much more professional look to clean up the edges of your tiles. This is a finishing stage, and it really can make a piece look so much better. Now here's a great gloop of glue. See, I've had to work a bit harder at that one because it was a bit thicker, and I know somewhere around here there's quite a thick piece. I'll find it, because I remember seeing it and thought, aha, that'll be handy to show. And of course these are such a reflective tile, these too. Sometimes it's hard to see for the reflection. So I am using the sharp curved edge on the top here just to cut away the glue, if you like. But when I'm going against an edge, I turn it over and use the more rounded edge. Here's a good piece here, just to get off. Something quite rewarding about getting the glue off in this regard. I don't know why, I just like it. And now you see here there's unclear edges. It looks not very good, so I've just turned it over and I'm just excavating the edge of the tile, and you'll find that it'll look much better. Here's the glue. See, that's a piece of glue there. See, just cut it away. Looks much better already. And here's quite a piece here. I mean, that piece, that little tile looks like it may not have just been sitting flat enough, but that's okay. Of course, mirror, people think it scratches. It's not so much that it scratches, but if there is a scratch or a mark on it, of course you get it paid back double time, because the mirror reflects it, so it gives it back to you in double dose. So It's very important with mirror to not scratch it. It's not that it scratches more, it just shows up more. And it's very important to get those edges nice and clean. So you can see it's coming up, starting to come up quite nicely with the black. I was debating as to whether I used pale silver with this as well, which with the pretty plum tones would have looked quite nice, but I think black is a good foil for most colours. Why is that so? Black is a recessive colour and does tend to push other colours forward, whereas white tends to go, oh hello, I'm here, look at me, and it is dominant, and so of course it draws the eye, and that's not a good idea, particularly when you're beginning, because your interstices may not be even, they may not be straight, and so white grout will accentuate those errors, if you like, whereas black, it doesn't so much hide them, but it does not draw the eye to them, and it lets the eye rest on what really should be the hero of your piece, your beautiful tiles or glass. So I'm not going to do much more with this. I just will probably clean up for a little while and pop back and show you how I finished it. So now I've been cleaning up this piece, and you can see that it fairly sparkles. I do hear of people who say they polish their piece with vinegar. I really don't think it needs it. I've just not done anything more. I haven't applied a huge amount of pressure to this piece, but you can see I have gone around all the edges, and I could sit and pick and play with this for ages. It's something that I really find quite enjoyable to do. It's relaxing, and I can just go around and pay, as I said, pay attention to the edges. Now there's a sharp bit of glue there. I'm just going to cut that off with the sharp end of this little tool and just cut it away, because it's actually glued to the frame there. And wipe it off. There's a bit there. As I said, you could go along with this for ages, but I'm pretty happy with it. I know that there's no areas that I need to fill in with grout, so I'll show you how I clean up my little grout bowls, and that's really the end of it. So I'll put this to one side somewhere. Now with my little bowl, I just take out the grout that's left over, and this is where these really come into their own, these little grout bowls. They don't have any sharp corners, so, and this is handy too if you're getting, if you cut your measurements a bit fine, you can actually pull out so much of it, and I just into the garbage bin with that. And this is where I get my, I just get a bit of water and a bit of paper towel. With grout on these silicone bowls, when it dries you can crack it off, but I find it's still just easier if I just wash them out. They do get stained, but I could quite happily use this with white grout. In fact, I have done that in the past. It's not staining that much. And if you're concerned, you can just give it another wash out. Just with a bit of paper towel. That all goes into the bin. And that's it. I also use these little bowls for cement-based adhesive. I find particularly this small one is wonderful, and I use my cement-based adhesive with baggies, which means that a mix can stay viable for, and this is through personal experience, up to 9 hours. I had 3 tablespoons of the stuff, and I mixed it up at 2:30 one afternoon, and I was still using it at 11:30 that night. I did have a break for dinner in the middle, which is what, and I just went back to check something before I went to bed and went, oh, I could just apply a bit more, and I did. So this spoon has been left stuck in some epoxy grout at some point. That's what all this on here is. It's epoxy grout under there, and I don't know whether I'll ever get it off. I chip away at it every so often, but it's not really coming off. But thank goodness it's not part of my grandmother's dinner set. So that's all I do, and then I pop that away to live and grout another day as that. And what I thought I would do with this little product, when I do paint it up, I'm going to a little silver bee on it, or maybe a butterfly. I think that will look rather pretty, and that's what I might do. I could add a black one, but I think I like the silver. I have them in butterfly, I have bees, I have fairies, I do have dragonflies. I don't have a silver dragonfly here at this moment. They come in black, gold, rose gold, and white. Oh, I might put the white on, actually. I don't mind the white either. Anyway, I'll play with that and see what eventuates. So I hope that you've taken away something from this, and you've learnt a bit about grouting, or at least how I grout. And do try and enjoy it. It can be very relaxing, she says, still fiddling with it because she can. But I'll see you in the next one. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to hit the like button below, make a comment, and subscribe to my channel.